China's economic collapse is real, and no country, even the United States, can simply ignore it and not get impacted at all. Now, I do know that things are looking up for the US, but China's woes are real and they are well and truly fully on their way. Now, we have a packed video right here, and in the second half of it, I'm going to show you the top ranking silver stock for 2025 in my book. They are developing a project and have announced that the production cost is projected to be only $9.40 per ounce of silver, which is 43% below the global average. So you'll definitely want to hear all about it in the second half of this video. For the last 5 months in a row now, China's industrial profits have been dropping, not in inflation adjusted terms, not in imaginary terms of some other kind, but in real terms, which now means that China has seen its sharpest annual decline since records began in 2000. And to make matters even worse, this trend is going to continue, with 2025 set to be China's new sharpest drop for industrial profits ever, right after 2024 in second place. Now, this follows China making serious efforts to change this for the entirety of the last year as well, with interest rate cuts to record lows and trillions in liquidity freed up for banks in an attempt to use debt to prop their economy upwards. Now, many might say that this is purely a result of Trump's rise over recent months alone, and whilst that has had a massive impact as globalization is set to take another massive hit, China is also just simply suffering from weak demand for their industry within their country, making it apparent this is a countrywide issue. And it's not just heavy industry that's suffering in China either. Retail sales only just managed to creep positive after the entirety of 2024, sitting at just 3%, which sounds good from a Western perspective, but that was below even the worst and most bearish predictions throughout 2024. The South China Morning Post put out this hilarious article back in January 2024, predicting industrial output to rise by 11% over 2024 as a little example of just how far this mark has been missed. And we've also got to keep in mind that China is still developing as an economy, with more than 20 million Chinese becoming urbanized each year, going from an agrarian society with almost no wider contribution to the economy to essentially becoming economically active for the first times ever. A great Western equivalent of how this sort of magic and smoke and mirrors occurs is the UK economy, and how on the surface GDP didn't actually fall over 2024, and it had a tiny amount of growth of about 0.1% each quarter. But when you take a look at British GDP in per capita terms, it shows that the country is actually getting poorer as per capita GDP is dropping fast. And the numbers are only being held up in headline gross figures because of the huge spike in immigration that we've seen. Now, with China and retail sales, these newly urbanized people aren't literally appearing out of thin air, but in the way they impact retail sales and these economic figures, they sort of are. So even 5% growth for China would be bad news, and it's actually well below that level. Of course, one of the biggest inevitable impacts to China's economy is what's going to happen within the rest of 2025 as Trump comes into power. Now, you don't need me to tell you that Trump is not exactly a fan of China's export policies or their foreign policies, or really just any of their policies. And just like we saw massive tariffs placed on China when Trump was president before, it's incredibly likely that we're going to see similar policies this time around, and that will have an even greater impact on China and their economy. We're already getting reports that Trump's team have had little patience with the Chinese government over the last few weeks, with communication close to nil, a bellwether for just how aggressive the Trump administration is likely to be with regards to China. We actually saw a bit of a miracle a few months ago as the BBC actually put out something accurate for once, noting how China's economy is flagging and Trump is going to be taking aim at them, making it even more unlikely they manage to get things moving again. He campaigned heavily during the election about protecting American industry and placing heavy tariffs all across the Chinese economy, including some tariffs as high as 60%. Now, I know that some people think this couldn't possibly be happening already, that Trump can't already be having an impact on China's economy, that he isn't even actually president yet, and he's not going to be for at least a couple more weeks. But we've already seen a complete and total reset of many different policies and acts by governments all over the world because they know for sure that Trump is now coming into power and he is going to make changes. Let's not forget that Qatar announced that all members of Hamas had to leave the country within days of Trump winning the election, and they even went so far as to announce that if they didn't leave by their own accord, they would literally be deported. Now, considering how Hamas has had its leadership based in Qatar for many, many years, the impact of Trump even winning the election cannot be overstated. Now, of course, Trump isn't out there putting a target on China's back. He is setting out to prioritize America's interest in his own way, and that means tackling anyone who does something that isn't ideal for for America. BRICS countries are obviously going to be high up on that list, with almost all of them making statements and moves to directly destabilize and reduce the influence of the US dollar, not only right now, but over the last few years as well. Now, as BRICS countries continue to grow in members and in influence, we can expect this trend to continue with all certainty. Now, Trump actually came out swinging recently regarding BRICS countries, saying explicitly that the idea that the BRICS countries are to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. And Trump has even gone on to target and say similar things about Europe and the EU, with him stating exactly, "I told the European Union that they must make up their tremendous deficit with the United States by the large-scale purchase of our oil and gas. Otherwise, it is tariffs all the way." As you can see, in the Trump era, currency wars will be fought, and I expect a war between fiat currencies to shine a light on gold and silver. And that's why today I'm making a huge announcement and profiling a new sponsor in the silver sector. And I know it's only January, but this is already my #1 silver stock for the year. But things are just moving too rapidly, and I just want to put my name on it today. Why? Because silver might be poised for a 2025 from the storybooks, and there are a few critical components that indicate a potential major breakout is likely imminent. Right now, the USD is pretty much the strongest it's ever been, except for a very brief period in 1985. In other words, this is the best the dollar has to offer, and in 2000 and in 2018, when the dollar was similarly strong, silver at least doubled right after. This time, not only is the dollar at an all-time high, but real rates are also at multi-year highs, suggesting silver could go truly nuts. Finally, the silver to gold ratio is nearing a generational bottom, and the last time this occurred, silver soared over 1,000% over the next decade. With just about 2 weeks between now and the inauguration, I am issuing my most important silver announcement of the decade. 9 analysts, all with buy ratings, are covering this one. Wall Street stalwart Franklin Templeton, as well as Sprott Inc. and billionaire investor Eric Sprott himself, are all shareholders of my sponsor for today's video. This is a silver company listed on the New York Stock Exchange that is, I believe, one of the most underpriced and undervalued silver stocks of our generation. That's a big statement, and I'd like to detail exactly why. So stay with me for a moment, because I think most investors are at least 1 year behind in their view of this stock, if not more, and I'll fill the gap for you in the next few minutes. Now, I really don't want to let you miss the chance to understand the true potential upside and the very high likelihood that I am correct in reaching the conclusion that today's sponsor, VZLA Silver, ticker VZ or ZLA, could be a significant story in the silver sector. The analysts covering the stock are all issuing buy ratings with targets ranging from $3 all the way up to $4.50, as you can see on the screen right now. Now, I'm here to tell you that critical and crucial near-term catalysts for VZLA Silver could be coming in 2025, as you can see on this slide. Now, don't dismiss or ignore this next part, because over the next 120 seconds or less, I'll lay out the entire bullish thesis so you can then research VZLA Silver for yourself, a company whose holders include Eric Sprott, Sprott Inc., and Wall Street giant, a $1 trillion plus asset management behemoth, Franklin Templeton. Now, their confidence in VZLA speaks volumes, and this is what they're looking at when analyzing the Panuco Silver and Gold project, the world-class asset at the heart of VZLA's success in Mexico. Now, this is no ordinary deposit, it's a crown jewel with the potential to become one of the world's top 10 silver-producing mines. Targeted to commence production in 2027, Panuco's economics are exceptional. The company intends to make a production decision only following release of a positive feasibility study. Now, with estimated all-in sustaining costs of just $9.40 per ounce based on a recent preliminary economic assessment compared to the industry average of $17.56, VZLA Silver is positioned as a low-cost leader in the space. Now, there is no certainty that the results of the preliminary economic assessment will be realized, but as VZLA advances toward a production decision, this valuation gap is bound to close. The 2025 catalysts are nearing, and if management is able to make a production decision, what I refer to as a re-rating moment could become likely. Mexico, where the Panuco project is located, is the world's top silver-producing country, and VZLA's well-funded $90 million treasury ensures it's perfectly positioned to capitalize on the opportunity. VZLA Silver, trading on the New York Stock Exchange under the ticker symbol VZLA, is not just another stock. It's the silver stock of the decade, I believe. Unbeatable institutional backing, low estimated production costs, and the world-class Panuco project represent, in my book, significant unparalleled upside potential. The stock currently trades around $1.70 as I record this video, and these are the analyst names ratings. all buy and target prices. Research VZLA Silver, ticker VZLA, on the New York Stock Exchange now. While the average peer spends $17.56 to produce 1 ounce of silver, Panuco, the company's flagship asset, has an estimated all-in sustaining cost of only $9.40 based on that recent preliminary economic assessment. Now, nothing is certain here, but these preliminary numbers are great in my view. There is no other silver project of that scale, size, and near-term production timeline that is even remotely comparable. Seriously, if you understand VZLA like I do, the risk is in staying indifferent towards this, if you ask me. Now, let's quickly recap what we're looking at in simple terms and in bullet points. Adjusted for inflation, silver is trading significantly below its all-time highs from nearly 50 years ago. This might be the ideal time to consider high-potential silver stocks like VZLA Silver. VZLA Silver boasts endorsements from multiple analysts, all with buy ratings. Their lowest target price of $3 represents a 66% upside from its current price of $1.80. And VZLA's flagship asset, the Panuco Silver and Gold project in Mexico, is a potential game changer. Targeted to commence silver production in 2027, Panuco is set to become one of the world's top 10 silver producing mines. And the company intends to make a production decision only following release of a positive feasibility study. I can feel this is one of the most monumental videos I've ever put together, so go ahead and research New York Stock Exchange listed VZLA Silver.